Sir, good afternoon. I thank Dr. Jyotirmay Paul, Secretary, JIMA, and the organizing team for giving this opportunity to talk on approach to craniovertebral junction anomalies. All of us know the craniovertebral junction refers to occiput, atlas axis vertebra, and articulations and their connecting ligaments. What are the ligaments? Which is in 4 layers. Atlanta occipital membrane, which is anterior and posterior, pad, alar, and apical, transverse and cruciate, and tectorial membrane. The joints are atlanto-axial and atlanto-occipital joints. So this picture shows the number 1 is basi-occipital, number 2 is exo-occipital and supra-occipital joints. This picture, the second picture shows the clivus, and this is the base of the skull, which shows the foramen magnum and other structures. This slide shows the parts of atlas and axis vertebra. We have superior articular facets and transverse process, transverse foramen and posterior tubercle. The axis, which shows the dens and the body, superior articular facet, transverse foramen, pedicle, and lamina. This is the spinous process. This picture clearly shows the atlanto-occipital membrane anterior, the posterior atlanto-occipital membrane. This is the tectorial membrane, transverse ligament of atlas, anterior longitudinal ligament, and posterior longitudinal ligament. These things are important for the approach of craniovertebral anomaly. So what are the neural structures which are related to this? One is medulla, the other is fourth ventricle, rostral part of the spinal cord, lower cranial nerves and upper cervical nerves. Cerebellum, only the tonsils, biventral lobules, and lower part of the vermis is related to this junction. So what is the classification says of CV anomalies? We have broadly divided into bony anomalies and soft tissue anomalies. The major anomalies are platybasia, atlas occipitalization, basilar invagination, atlanto-axial dislocation. The minor anomalies are dysplasia of atlas and dysplasia of occipital condyle and clivus. We have only 2 soft tissue anomalies. One is Arnold Chiari and syringomyelia or bulb. So the etiology, which is congenital and acquired, the malformations of occipital sclerotome and malformation of the atlas and malformation of the axis. So in malformation of the occiput, we have clival segmentation, pro-atlas remnants, and atlas assimilation. Malformation of atlas, we have atlanto-axial fusion. Malformation of the axis, where the dense dysplasia is common. What are the acquired causes? Abnormalities of foramen magnum in the form of stenosis, secondary basilar invagination, osteomalacia and Page's disease, rickets, atlanto-axial instability, traumatic dislocation, Downs, rheumatoid arthritis, and spontaneous atlanto-axial rotatory subluxation. What are the clinical features? So we should know the age of onset. So it can occur at any age, may remain asymptomatic. Trivial trauma can precipitate the symptoms. The mode of onset, usually insidious. So frequently the trivial trauma is the precipitating cause. The signs and symptoms of CVJ anomalies. So whenever you have the progressive quadriplegia, lower cranial nerve involvement, descending tract of sympathetic nerve involvement in the form of loss of pain and temperature over the face, features of Horner syndrome, and cerebellar signs, we should think of CVJ anomalies. So motor myelopathy, it may be quite the subtle or non-specific. Then sensory, we have posterior column. Then brainstem dysfunction in the form of nystagmus, sometimes IMO. There will be lower cranial nerve involvement and vascular compromise. In some cases, we have syncope, vertigo. The craniometry of the CVJ uses a series of lines, planes, angles to define the normal anatomic relationship of the CV junction anomaly. So these measurements can be taken on a plain X-ray, 3D CT or a MRI. No single measurement is helpful. So the X-rays can be taken in the form of AP view, lateral, open mouth view for dense, and stress X-rays like neutral, flexion, and extension. CT scan with 3D construction, and we have MRI, conventional dynamic now. So this picture shows the various parts which is important for drawing the lines like opistheon, posterior part of the heart palate, anterior arch of the atlas, and posterior arch of the atlas, and the odontoid process. So the macross line, which is nothing but foramen magnum line, which connects basion to opistheon, where the tip of the dents does not cross this line, because the diameter is less than 20 millimeter, we have to think of foramen magnum stenosis. The next line is Chamberlain's line, which is nothing but palato-occipital line. So a line drawn from the posterior pole of the heart palate to the opistheon, where the tip of the dents is 1 millimeter below this line in general. Next is the McGregor line, which is nothing but the upper surface of the posterior edge of the heart palate to the most caudal part of the occipital curve. So usually the tip of the dents lies less than 5 millimeter above this line. Next is the height index of class, where the distance between the tip of the dents and tuberculum tarcula or line. The normal value is 40 millimeter. If it is less than 30 millimeter, we have to suggest it's a basilar invagination. The next is Bougrad line, which is drawn from Nasion to opistheon. The basion lies below this line. Bougad's angle, so it's the angle between the, I told you the macross line and clival canal line. So in between the macross and clival canal, the angle is Bougad's angle. The normal is 122 degree. If it is more than 135, we have to think of basilar invagination. The basal angle, it is the angle between the line formed by the Nasion to tuberculum cellae, the tuberculum cellae to basion. So the normal angle is 124 to 142. If it is more than 142 degree, we have to think of platybasia. So what is Bull's angle? It is nothing but atlanto-palatine angle. So the angle between the Chamberlain's line and the line joining the anterior and posterior arch of the atlas. The normal angle is more than 13 degree. If it is less than 13 degree, we have to think of basilar invagination. Next is the clival canal line or Wackenheim's line. The line is drawn along the clivus canal. So the odontoid lies ventral and tangential. In basilar invagination, the odontoid actually transects this line. Lastly, we have two lines. This is digastric line, where it connects the both digastric fossa. The odontoid does not project beyond this line. Lastly, the bimastoid line, which connects the tip of both the mastoids. So it runs across the atlanto-occipital joints. The odontoid tip projects 10 millimeter or less above this line. So the lines and the angles. So I told you the parameters and normal limits, which is given in this slide. The common causes of craniovertebral anomalies are 46% of atlantoaxial dislocation, 42% in case of soft tissue anomaly like Barnard Chiari and Serings. Atlas occipitalization forms 28%, basilar invagination forms 21%. We can have a combination like atlas occipitalization and atlantoaxial dislocation. The traumatic causes mostly the odontoid fracture and atlantoaxial dislocation. It's nothing but normally obtuse not a measure of basilar invagination. More than 140 degree is the basal angle. Hospitalization. So it forms 50% of all CVJ anomaly. Gradual or sudden onset by trauma, it affects both sexes equally, associated with basilar invagination and occipital vertebra and KF syndrome. So this is the types of atlas occipitalization. We have occipitalization with basilar invagination. Type 2 with fusion of second and third vertebra. Type 3 is total occipitalization. Basilar invagination, it implies that the floor of the skull is indented by the upper cervical spine. Hence, the tip of the odontoid protrudes into the foramen magnum. We have two types of basilar invagination. One primary is developmental, and secondary is acquired. So the primary in the form of atlanto-occipital fusion, the hyperplasia of atlas and odontoid anomalies. The causes of secondary basilar invagination includes Hurler's syndrome, rickets, Page's osteogenesis imperfecta. The type of basilar invagination is a secondary basilar invagination. We have anterior, posterior, unilateral, and generalized. So this picture shows the basilar invagination. The atlanto-occipital instability, there is atlanto-occipital dislocation. There is excessive movement at the junction between the atlas and axis as a result of either bony ligamentous abnormality. When, if you say it is symptomatic, if the spinal canal or nerve roots are involved, then they're symptomatic. What is the incidence? 57% of all CVJ anomalies forms the atlanto-occipital dislocation. 8.3% of all causes of cervical cord compression. So Wardia has classified into three groups: atlanto-occipital dislocation with atlas occipitalization, 2 odontoid mall development, 3 dislocation but no mall development. The non-traumatic conditions: Downs rheumatoid arthritis and neurofibromatosis. The anterior atlantodental interval is very important. When it is more than 3 millimeter in adults, more than 5 millimeter in children. Posterior atlantodental interval, that is PADI, normally is 19 to 32 millimeter at C1 if it is less than 14 millimeter, which predicts cord compression. So the risk factors for cord compression in a case of anterior is more than 9 millimeter, posterior it is 14 millimeter. So the Hawkins classification of atlanto-occipital dislocation, type 1 is simple, type 2 which involve anterior displacement of C1 on C2. Type 3 is greater than 5 millimeter of displacement. Type 4 is posterior displacement of C1 on C2. 3 and 4 are highly unstable injuries. Treatment: type 1 is collar, type 2 is potentially unstable, type 3 and 4 needs surgery. Next is the dense dysplasia. Type 1 is a separate odontoid process. Type 3 is failure of fusion of apical segment with its base. Type 3 is agenesis of odontoid and the apical segment lies separately. Type 4 is agenesis of odontoid apical segment. Type 5 is total agenesis of odontoid. The os odontoidum is separate until the age of 8. The anterior arch of the atlas is rounded and hypertrophic, but the posterior arch is hypoplastic. The persistent basiculum terminal, a few words about it. The fusion of the terminal ossicle to the remainder of the odontoid by 12 years. It is usually confused with a type 1 odontoid fracture. It is stable when isolated. Usually, odontoid process is not normal in height. Posterior arch anomalies, it simulates Jefferson fracture. Next common syndrome is Klippel-Feil syndrome. So you usually Feil's triad, that is SLR, short neck, low hairline, and restricted neck movements. So the flexion and the extension are better preserved. What are the types of Klippel-Feil? Major fusion of the cervical and upper thoracic vertebra. Type 2, fusion of 2 cervical vertebra. Type 3 is lower thoracic and upper lumbar spines. Type 4 is sacral agenesis. What are the associated conditions? The common associations are scoliosis, genitourinary, Sprengel's deformity, deafness, synkinesis. Some patients will have mirror movements. If they do in one hand, so that will reflect the other hand. Then cervical anomalies. Associated other conditions are ptosis of the eye, Duane's contraction, torticollis are associated. Next, common soft tissue anomaly is Arnold-Chiari malformation. We have four types. Type 1, congenital tonsillar herniation and tonsillar ectopia. Type 2 is less common and more severe, almost invariably associated with myelomeningocele. Type 3 is herniation of cerebellum into the high cervical myelomeningocele. Type 4 is cerebellar agenesis. So type 3 and 4 are exceedingly rare. Actually, it is incompatible with life. So this picture shows the Chiari type 1 malformation, the white line down to the level of C1 posterior arch. Treatment of Arnold-Chiari malformation. There is no role for prophylactic treatment in asymptomatic patients. All symptomatic patients require surgical treatment. In hydrocephalus, we have to do shunting. Then symptomatic ventral compression from basilar invagination or retroflexion of the odontoid, we have to do ventral decompression. They have serines with scoliosis. So initially the treatment is posterior cervical medullary decompression. So patient presenting with pain and weakness without any atrophy, it gives best results. If you have brainstem and cerebellar syndromes in case of Arnold-Chiari, there will be good recovery. We have cranial nerve involvement, moderate recovery. Sensory and central cord syndrome and serines, usually there will be poor outcome. The most prognostic of poor outcome are atrophy, ataxia, and scoliosis. Few words about tuberculous atlantoaxial dislocation, which forms less than 1% of all cases of spinal TB. The compression is mainly due to granulation tissue cold abscess or bony instability. They will have waxing and waning picture. The ligaments are extensively infiltrated. The radiological findings in the form of three stages. Stage 1, retropharyngeal abscess with ligamentous laxity. Stage 2, ligamentous disruption with atlantoaxial dislocation with minimal bone destruction and retropharyngeal abscess. Stage 3, there is marked destruction of the bone, complete obliteration of the arch of C1 and loss of odontoid causes marked atlantoaxial dislocation. Treatment, bed rest cervical traction, evacuation of the abscess with ATT. So the indication of surgery is mainly gross bony destruction with the instability with major neurological deficits. Surgery in the form of posterior fusion or anterior decompression with or without fusion. Rheumatoid arthritis and CVJ junction anomaly. 20% of rheumatoid arthritis have atlantoaxial dislocation. Osteophytic formation does not occur secondary to deficient osteogenesis, which is characteristic of rheumatoid arthritis. Loss of tensile strength and strengthening of TL occurs in atlantoaxial dislocation. Treatment, asymptomatic, without AI, left alone. Indication of a surgical treatment with neurological signs, persistent cervical symptoms. Younger patient with vigorous lifestyle, surgical treatment is indicated even in the absence of symptoms. Thank you one and all for the patient.